Hello, everybody. Welcome to Jewish Family and Career Services. And I want to welcome John Nevitt from Metro United Way up front to welcome Renee King.
Good evening, everyone. John Nevitt, Senior Manager of Strong Households and Economic Mobility at Metro United Way, and delighted to be here. And I have the pleasure of introducing the next person in line to speak here tonight. We started a partnership with this lady a couple years ago, and it has seen tremendous success. It is an organization known as Fund Black Founders. And we were connected to Renee King through a mutual contact, Sean Rochester, who has a great book, by the way, called The Black Tax, a quick plug. But Sean knew we were interested in supporting entrepreneurs in our community, particularly those of color, and he made the connection to Renee and said, I think you're really going to like her, and guess what? He was right. So Renee has been leading some work for us with a cohort, and as we explore how we can make the system work better tonight, which I think is part of the conversation. So delighted to introduce Renee King of Fund Black Founders.
Hi. John gets to do that intro a lot. Just FYI, he's always introducing me on Zoom calls and all different types of things. So how many people are entrepreneurs? How many people are resource providers for entrepreneurs? How many people are like thinking about entrepreneurship? Okay. All right. I just wanted to know who was in the room. Okay, I got it. So earlier today, I was at Metro United Way, and we were talking about the ecosystem. So my name is Renee King. I'm the founder of Fund Black Founders. We could talk more about what we do, but essentially, we're focused on helping early-stage entrepreneurs get the money, capital, and resources they need to start and grow their businesses. So earlier today, I was at Metro United Way, we're talking about different things of like, how do we get better as an ecosystem in supporting entrepreneurs? And like one of the questions was like, what's the number one tool that you think entrepreneurs should have, right? You know, like somebody has it. And my thought on that is a resilient mindset, your mindset of resilience, right? If you have that, you're going to be successful no matter what you try to do, whatever business you decide or you're thinking of. Resilience is the number one thing, and I'll tell you why I believe that. I think many of us entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs of color, we start from scratch with like no privilege or perks. So if you are like, for example, maybe you're an immigrant entrepreneur, you came here and you started something. Maybe you are a woman entrepreneur, a person of color. Like you don't have all the things that maybe some other founders may have. Personal story, I'll tell you, is that my mom immigrated here from Jamaica. She was a resilient woman who was very focused on making sure that I had the best education, the best resources. She was always trying to figure out where to put me, right? And that landed me to be the DEI student in this private high school that there's no way I could even afford to be there, like had a scholarship, but my mom figured it out and that's where I went, right? And I was in this AP class and I'm struggling in this class, in this AP, it was like AP science. And I would like, later on, I figured out I'm struggling in this class, but meanwhile, my classmates weren't struggling because they were going home to tutors. So they had tutors in the AP class, which I thought was really wild to me. Like, why would you have a tutor in an AP class, too? We'll get to the point of my story. So I think that what I'm trying to share with you, as for being resilient, my mom was resilient, that got passed down to me. I ended up there, and I'm still in this AP class, even though I don't have tutors. And that's what resilience looks like, right, for entrepreneurs who come from different backgrounds. Like we may not have all the tutors and all the different things, but we still have resilience in our DNA is why you're able to start these businesses and still make it and compete against any other founder that's starting. I think it's interesting, there was a data point that's on this document that you'll see, 93.5% of businesses in Louisville are small businesses. That's really interesting. So you're leading the way and starting these businesses. That's a large number of small businesses here. Even though we start them, and maybe we don't have tutors, maybe you don't have everything you need resource-wise, I'm gonna share a tutor hack that you can share with, if you're a resource provider, with the entrepreneurs you support, or if you're an entrepreneur who you're thinking about it. Even though I didn't have a tutor and I'm struggling in this AP class, it still would have been great if I had tutors. And as entrepreneurs, you don't have to go it alone. You have tutors. The tutors are here, right? You're gonna hear from a couple of them. You're gonna know about a couple different resources that this org is gonna tell you about after. Align yourself, like we know you're resilient and you could figure it out, but take advantage of like now adding some tutors to your resilient greatness that's gonna take you even further. And the one other thing I would always share is that community is the #1 thing too. Like if resilience is here, community is also here. Do not discount the value of building the community. So you're in a community right now when you're here, so you're gonna build community with the panelists, build community with the people beside you. The best information you can get is from fellow entrepreneurs, right? From people who are also doing it. And also these people in the audience can be future champions and customers, so don't discount the value of building community. So those are my takeaways that I wanted to share before you get into the panel where they're gonna get into like a really good discussion about all different things. I watched their pre-pep, it was really hilarious and funny, so get ready for that. And that's it, thank you.
Good evening. I'm David Fink. I'm the CEO of Jewish Family and Career Services. Thank you, Renee King, for taking the time out of your schedule to participate with this event and set the stage for this great discussion. Thank you. I also would like to thank our sponsor for this evening, who is Councilman Ben Reno Weber, who has supported this through the Neighborhood Development Fund at Metro Louisville. Now, welcome to the 7th JFCS Community Chat. For those of you who are not familiar with JFCS, these community chats represent our commitment to addressing pertinent needs in the community and highlighting the importance of collaboration. Particularly tonight, we're going to mostly talk about in the nonprofit sector. Sometimes we talk about collaboration in the nonprofit, the for-profit, and also the government sector. As many of you already know, JFCS has a simple yet elusive vision that all in Greater Louisville live with dignity and purpose. And we have a broad array of services that work to make this a reality. If you do not know about our Klein Older Adult Program, our clinical and career services, our Janet and Sonny Meyer Dare to Care Food Pantry, our case management services, or our family stability services, which we partner with Metro United Way for, please take note of the flyers at your seat and feel free to visit our website. One of those programs in career services is our JFCS Navigate program, which has been working in Greater Louisville with individuals who dream of starting their own business. This program began about 30 years ago. The Navigate program has supported the business model planning process, provides technical assistance, and offers microloans for individuals. Today, there are small businesses throughout Louisville who are existing because of Navigate and with the help of Navigate. And through funding from the Office of Refugee and Resettlement, we've been able to provide this program, particularly with refugees and immigrants in our community. We know that there are individuals in the crowd who are dreamers and looking to start their own businesses and resources and have that grit and that resiliency that Renee referred to. We want this to be a meaningful conversation for everyone, and we'll have a survey at the end so you can stay connected. You can also help us understand what we can do better for events like tonight, and we can keep this conversation going beyond tonight. Before I jump into bios, I also want you all to know that at the end of tonight, we'll have, probably 15 or 20 minutes for audience questions. We'll have a microphone that will go out around the crowd so that you can ask the question yourself. If you are somebody who is shy or you do not want your question associated with you, you are welcome to use the QR code. And on the QR code, you'll be able to send the questions and they'll be delivered to me and I can ask the questions on your behalf because I'm not smart enough to stay anonymous. So now let's talk about our panelists and let's meet our panelists tonight. Immediately to my right is Valecia Quinn. Valecia has been the director of the JFCS Navigate program since May of 2021. Prior to joining JFCS, Valecia enjoyed a rewarding career with over 33 years in the news publishing industry business with Gannett and USA Today Network. Valecia held both regional and national roles and was recognized as an industry expert in consumer marketing, sales, and operations, and has demonstrated successes tied to generating top-line revenue growth. Throughout Valicia's media career, she assumed several industry leadership roles, including, I didn't know all this, president of the Newspaper Association of America Circulation Federation and president of the Ohio, my home state, Circulation Managers Association. In addition to leading the Navigate program, Valecia serves as the JFCS Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chair for our organization, leading and implementing strategy and cultural training initiatives to increase employee engagement and belonging. Valecia is a board member for the Credit Builders Alliance, that also known as CBA. The CBA fund is for the Center of Neighborhoods. She is strategic advisor for Metro United Way's Black Love Philanthropy Partnership Advisory Committee, and is a member of the Community Impact Cabinet at Metro United Way. She has also served as a CASA volunteer, which is the court-appointed special advocate in family courts, and as an AARP Kentucky volunteer. She holds a bachelor's degree of arts in business administration with minors in communication and economics. Thank you for being here, Valecia. Next in our panel. All right, next on our panel is Natalia Bishop. Natalia originated from Colombia, has called Louisville home for the past 23 years, where she lives with her husband, 2 kids, her mom, and their Boston Terrier, Snoop. As a general partner at Renew VC, Natalia invests with empathy in bold, diverse, early-stage founders who generate impactful results at scale. She has also served as the Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the University of Louisville, where she is dedicated to building a regional ecosystem that supports scalable companies focused on health equity. Again, we're talking about important factors to resilience. Her efforts are particularly directed towards engaging communities most affected by health equity disparities and leveraging resources to foster innovation and entrepreneurship across the region for students and founders in the community. Natalia served as an entrepreneur in residence for Amplify Louisville and helped establish their Entrepreneur in Residence program. Natalia's entrepreneurial journey began when she founded Story, Louisville's first and largest co-working space dedicated to enhancing the startup ecosystem with a focus on accessibility and equity. This venture provided her with invaluable experience in scalability, fundraising, team building, and brand development. She later transitioned to become the CEO of Level Up, a modern education company providing women with the tools to advance their careers and passions through live, online, and on-demand content. Recognized as a leader in the Louisville startup community, Natalia has received the 40 Under 40 Award from Louisville Business First and serves on multiple boards, including GLI's Tech First and Wild Accelerator. She was also a 2023 JFC Mosaic honoree, something I'm rather happy about. She is frequently sought after for her expertise in diversity and inclusion in tech, innovative company culture, and strategic fundraising, and she actively mentors, supports founders through various initiatives. Natalia, thank you for being here. Next on our panel is Dr. Alisia McClain. Dr. Alisia McClain is a visionary leader and advocate for equity in technology and data science education and workforce development. She is the founder and executive director of TECH-Nique, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing community-centric opportunities in technology that elevates the voices and experiences of underrepresented groups. In addition to her nonprofit work, Dr. McClain is the founder of Avidus Labs, which is a for-profit consulting firm that partners with organizations to deliver expert data strategy, evaluation, and tech support services. Previously, Dr. McClain served as the executive director of Microsoft's Future of Work initiative, where she spearheaded a groundbreaking civic-private partnership to prepare Louisville for the rise in machine learning and AI. Dr. McClain holds a bachelor's degree in vocal jazz from Temple University a master's degree in secondary math from Spalding University, and a PhD in educational learning, evaluation, and organizational development from the University of Louisville. Her dissertation, Still I Rise, explored the intersection, I love this, an intersection of authentic leadership, intersectionality, evaluation, and equity in computer science, focusing on Black femme, identifying and gender expansive emerging adults in technology leadership. All right, but I wasn't really done. That was just one of those, pauses for effect. But I recognized, and I had to take a breath after that description of her dissertation. A recognized expert in generative AI and a committed community leader, Dr. McClain's work reflects her dedication to leveraging cutting-edge technology for social good. Dr. McClain, welcome. And while we respect your PhD, is one I hope that we can call you Alisia for the rest of this evening.
I'll allow it.
Thank you very much. Next, it's as if we haven't already had quite impressive crowd. Next is Dave Christopher. Dave is the executive director and founder of AMPT, which stands for those of you who don't know, Adventurous Minds Produce Extraordinary Dreams. AMPT uses music and technology as a catalyst to empower youth and their families to work as a team, learn how to express themselves effectively, and develop into healthy, productive members of our community and the world. Sound familiar? Programs include career readiness, business development, workshops, mentoring, and family support. He holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice administration from the University of Louisville and a nonprofit executive leadership certificate from Harvard University. He is the recipient of the KET American Graduate Hero Award, Kentucky Blacks in Media Award from the Black Media Collaborative, Metro United Way's Black Male Achievement Innovation Award, and the Sullivan Community Service Award. Dave is an Alden, BME, and Humana Fellow. Thank you for being here, Dave. So before tonight started, Renee asked me if I was nervous, and I wasn't until I introduced them, and now I'm nervous. So I'm really excited about this opportunity to have this conversation because we really have some of our community's very impressive leaders in the room to help us and share with us their knowledge. So we're looking forward to this. I often like to start these community chats with sort of a level-setting conversation to kind of put us all on the same page. So I'm going to throw this out and let whoever would like to start on this. What would you define? Let's start with what is a small business? And I don't know who would like to start with what is a small business, because there's different ways to describe it. Dave, go ahead. I know you'll always go.
I don't really think of it that way, and I'll say why I say that, right? When you talk about small business, I'm sure there's some technical definition for small business, but if anybody knows me, they know that when I come up with an idea for something, I'm thinking of it like this, right? And so I had written down this idea of the million widget mindset. And so I think that whole idea of a small business is constraining to begin with. And so to say that I'm a small business, as opposed to like somebody on a new journey or a new endeavor, makes more sense to me. So I don't have the technical definition of small business, but to me, I mean, a $4 million company is a small business compared to a $20 million company. So so somebody give it.
I would say that, if you look at small business, I mean, the natural thing you would think about is that it's normally one person starting. So sole proprietorship is normally where you get that whole small business piece. But like Dave said, it's all about the mindset in terms of how you want to go with that piece of it.
Okay. Well, I think, Natalia, you're about to answer the question I was about to ask. Go ahead.
So I think that both of you are right, and I think that, as defined by, I guess, just the general public, a small business could be a sole proprietorship, where there's 1 to maybe 10 employees. Sometimes that's called a lifestyle business, where maybe you're doing up to $20 million a year, which seems like a huge business to a lot of people, but it's still considered a small business. And then we can kind of move into scalable, what we call startups in the startup ecosystem, which are technology-enabled at larger scale businesses. Sometimes, though, and here's where it gets complicated, is that sometimes those are one person in a basement somewhere, right, making $300,000 a year coding, right? And so it gets a little bit difficult. But to Dave's point, it's really about targeting the problem that you're trying to solve and how big is that problem, how many people are experiencing that problem. So a small business, that is to say a small business that has a proven product in a market, can potentially scale to become a huge startup with the right amount of technology and the right team.
And I would also add to that is that a lot of folks do side hustles, and 70% of the working population has a side hustle. So those are technically small business, but they're just informal business structures.
Okay. So imagine that you have somebody that has a dream to start a venture. What was the phrase you used, Dave? In particular?
A million widget mindset. And so when I say that, the example I use is that there was a friend of mine who had made this product. It was a wheel polish, like you said, the Armor All type product, right, for shining wheels. And he wanted to get his product on the shelves at AutoZone. And so I went through the whole process and actually was successful in contacting AutoZone and them agreeing to do a contract with him. And I called him up and I was like, hey man, they're going to need about 5,000 units for you to get on the shelf. And he was like, I can't do that. And I go, well, what do you mean you can't do that? It's like, have you thought, when you first came up with the 5 or 10 or 20, did you have a plan for how you would create more, right? And so going back to what I said originally, is like every idea that I've come up with, every business that I've done, I always thought about it being bigger than what it started to be, so that you're prepared for it. So he missed that opportunity to be on the shelves at AutoZone because they didn't have time to wait for him to figure out how to come up with the units that he needed. And the door had been opened. And so I think that's what I mean by that million widget mindset, is that everything should, and it could be whatever you want it to be. It could stay small if that's what you want it to be. It could be, one employee, it could be just you, but don't ever sell yourself short in how big it can be, and start thinking about all the things you need to do just in case.
So, thank you. So as if you're somebody who's thinking about starting a business, what is the part, Renee talked about resilience. Mm-hmm. What is the part of resilience? How do you know if you have the resilience you need? And how do you, this is a huge question, and how do you get that resilience if you don't have it, right? What are the steps to that?
So I think, as you can see, we have a really incredible diversity in thought. But I think if you look at each person that's here, one thing you'll see that we all have in common is a passion for what we do. And I think from my perspective, I did it. From my perspective, it's not just seeing that there's an issue or a problem that you have the capacity to solve, but also it has to resonate, for me personally, with something deeper inside of me, because hard times are going to come where you maybe didn't think about, right? Maybe you didn't have a million widget mindset, but that passion for what it is that you do will sustain you. Maybe you don't get the AutoZone contract because you're going to get, I don't know, the Walmart, the bigger contract or something. Maybe you actually weren't ready yet. But the common thread that moves through everything that I do is that sustained passion, that part of my purpose for existing is to do this. And so because of that, I feel like that carries me through and provides me with that resilience, provides me with that support when I'm in an AP class with no tutor, which oftentimes I feel like starting a business feels like, that carries me through, that sustains me, finding that passion, that peace that ignites you every day to continue to do what it is that you do.
For me, I think that there are two pieces to this. One is really thinking about, don't think about, is it a small business or is it a startup or how big is it? I think you have to go back to your own self and your families and start really defining what success would look like for you. Maybe that is, I make $100,000 a year. And that's your definition of success, and you will be happy with that. Maybe you're like, you know what, I want to travel the world and live remote and, never settle down and see, 50 countries in the next 10 years, right? Maybe that's your goal. So what is your definition of success? So you start there, because if what you're defining as success is, not working 90 hours a week and, being in a startup mode, then you don't want to build that. It's incongruent with what you're trying to build. So that will be the first part. And then the second piece will be piggybacking of what Alisia just said. It's this definition of ikigai that we had talked about previously during our pre-chat to this, and it's a Japanese concept of thinking through what is good for this world, what is out there, what problem am I trying to solve that is important to me and I care about, what can I meaningfully get paid for, what am I good at, and when you intersect all of those pieces, you get your ikigai. And then, you hear people be like, oh, I never work a day in my life, whatever. Well, it's sort of like this idea of like, yeah, you're out here and you're sweating and you're, depleted and physically depleted, but you're energized by what it is that you're bringing to the world. So your solution or the idea is pretty much irrelevant. Like the armor roll, it doesn't really matter. What I want to do is make people happy when they see those wheels shine, right? That is the part. So really understanding what that problem you're solving, what it is that makes you think that's your ikigai, and how you get there, that's the resilience part. You're gonna go this way and find a bump in the road and then keep going, and it's a muscle. It's just like working out, right? You start and it's really hard and it sucks and you're tired, but you find your friend and you're like, hey, how did you do that? Or your mentor, and and so on and so forth. So it's really about training that muscle, having community to kind of catch you when you fall, and really being clear about what that North Star is for you, and focusing on the problem instead of what solution you're trying to bring.
I think what I can add to the equation is that there's going to be wins and losses. So I think the commitment is critical, but I also think the mental well-being is also critical in terms of an entrepreneur is going to have support. And when clients come to you, they may have other things going on in their life. So you've really got to level set and figure those pieces out, because the last thing you want to do is to encourage something where they're not ready for it. So understanding that holistic approach is something that we really do here, I think, very well at JFCS.
So right now we've been talking about sort of the positives. What are some of the maybe challenges? And I know that we sort of referenced that a little bit when we were talking about needing to have the resilience, but it's not all rainbows,
that
right?
96 hours she was talking about, like that 96 hours. I want to just back up just real quick and say this, and get it or don't. But like I am this person that believes that everybody in this room and everybody that wants to has that resilience in them. And a lot of times, like we have a business incubator, it's a year-long business incubator, and the majority of what we're teaching people is to believe in themselves and the thing that they're trying to do. That's the thing. It's like that passion can be there, but if you don't believe that what you want to do is not as difficult as you believe it is, when they talk about like how do you eat an elephant, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. If people get so caught up in the thing that's way down there when they haven't even taken care of the thing right in front of them, that becomes so overwhelming that they can't do it. And when we talk about the 96 hours, those 96 hours, and I think I can say this is true for all of us, that those 96 hours go by without us really even noticing. Because we're going towards something and we're so focused on that passion that we talk about, that thing that we want to do, that you look, I mean, I know when I first started my tech company, I was still working in IT at UPS. I would get off there at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd go home and I'd work till like 6 o'clock in the morning remotely on developing software and doing websites and stuff like that, and not even realize that I had literally been up the entire day, right? Because I was just passionate about it, and sadly, hadn't sent out any invoices because I was so caught up in the work. Don't do that. But I was so caught up in work, so for as much as that's a thing that's really difficult, going back to the point what's difficult, is that 96 hours, when you have that passion and that resilience, that 96 hours really doesn't seem like 96 hours. It doesn't.
I want to say that to that point, it's really sometimes difficult when you're so passionate and you find a problem that is really important to you to not be consumed by this. I think it's really important really early on to have a clear boundary within yourself, to have a sounding board within your family structure or your friend structure or your, just people in your life to kind of tag you and be like, it's time to get it together, or be healthy about it. There's a way to do this in which, to your point, the holistic mindset of this, where you can be healthy about this and still work really hard and still be determined and still be resilient, because we can't let it take our souls either, right? And it's easy to get, consumed by and energized by, the idea of this making it or being successful, whatever this is, right?
So where does that perspective come from? I mean, so if my goal is, I know I can make money by shaving the hair off of elephants, how do I know that's not a good idea? I am convinced.
I'll tell you really quick.
So what are the steps to sort of that process? And at this moment, I'm looking at sort of let's talk about the business plan piece, and then we're going to talk about the Natalia saying to me, what's wrong with you? That's not going to work. But let's talk about the business plan, please. Why is that important? How does that come into play?
I think also, the business plan piece, yes, like that is really important. I see you, David. I know you're like, no, but stick to like the concrete things that people can learn from. I'm just saying that there's different ways to get to that. For me, starting TECH-Nique didn't start with a business plan, but rather seeing based on research that I was doing, that what I was trying to create was not in existence. I didn't actually necessarily want to create. I did not know how to start a business. And that's one thing I wanted to say back to the question you asked before, the fear. I feel fear sitting here right now on this panel. But the point is that you continue to do it anyway. And that really is an important adage, that feel the fear and do it anyway. And so once I found something that I was so like, oh my gosh, like this, I'm so passionate about this, then the business plan piece just becomes sort of a formality. I don't want to say a formality because it is important, but it's just a necessary next step. But first of all, it's finding that passion, right? But then the second thing is that recognizing that the current solutions that exist are not actually solving that problem. So you have some sort of unique approach or something, a unique widget perhaps, that's actually going to approach that problem in a different way. And so from there, it becomes fairly easy to fill out a business plan. But like I said, like to me, it's more of that's a next step. If you don't have the mentality, you have to have the mentality that it's going to be scary. I'm going to fail sometimes, but I'm going to keep going because I know that this is solving a problem that is not currently being solved.
So, similar to Alisia, like I didn't start with a business plan. And I'll tell you what I think about business plans. I think they're important, but I think people have the wrong idea of what they're for. A business plan is your roadmap. It's for you to look back and say, did I do what I said I was going to do? Am I doing it the way I said I was going to do it? And so a lot of people think you get a business plan and you go to a bank and people give you money. That seldom happens, if ever. I don't know, maybe for somebody it happened. But like the fact is that business plan is really about how do I plan to do this so that, so that I have a guide, something to keep me on track to be more efficient with your time. If I said, I'm going to build some widgets, well, the first thing I need to do is find out what widgets don't exist, like what the special widgets are. And that's all done sort of in your head and written down on a piece of paper. But don't get so involved and so attached to a business plan because I've seen people, we see this a lot, that people spend years writing a business plan because they're trying to figure out the best business plan. And they should have just started. They should have whatever we have the lean model canvas, the lean business model canvas. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It's like one page thing that people use, and it identifies your risk and all those things. That's probably the best way to go when you're talking about how do you start your business, because that way you can take off running, right? That you got an idea of like who your audience is, what your product is, whether your product is worth anything or not, whether you should be doing this thing or not. That lean model canvas, business canvas is important, but there are organizations that will like tell you to write this, I don't know, 12, 13-page business plan, and here's the other thing about the business plan that's scary, is that it will scare you out of your work. You'll read this thing and you'll go, wait, you'll like, I can't do that, because you got all this in front of you. So I would say be cautious about writing that business plan to the point that it cripples you. But at some point you need to write it because you need to have that roadmap for yourself.
I guess I would come from the approach that it's really all about defining your market. Because if you don't have a market, meaning that you don't have a problem you're solving, which means that you don't have a business. And not having a business means that you can't make money. So we really have to encourage entrepreneurs to do that type of legwork up front. That's really what it's about, because everyone knows that entrepreneurship sounds sexy. Everybody knows, but it's very hard work. It's calculated risk. And we have to encourage and show folks that you have to research and define if you are solving a problem. If someone else is doing that, then it doesn't make sense. So I have plenty of clients that come to me to say, I can cook, but I want to own a food truck. That doesn't go together. So you got to back them up, and you got to take them through that process, because you want them to be successful. And to do that, you got to do the research. And then my last two pieces is that the top two reasons why businesses fail, one is because of cash flow, and the other is because there was no market demand.
I will say a couple things. One thing is ideas are a dime a dozen. Like we all have them. I don't know if you've ever been to like Target and be like, oh, I thought about this thing that is in the shelf now, right? Or I mean, it happens to me all the time. And one of the things that I think really helps entrepreneurial mindset, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to build a business out of it, but it's a way of seeing the world in a way where you are constantly looking for problems to solve, right? So I will be driving down the highway and be like, this would be a great place for a coffee shop or whatever, like, right? So you apply that to so many things in your life constantly. And so I would say the very first thing will be, once you're focusing on that problem, really thinking through, what are the market gaps in that? And then maybe that's something that you were experiencing, right? You have lived experience with the problem, so you were like, well, I can't find the specific hair product I need for my hair, or I can't find the specific type of support for in-home care that I need for my aging parent, right? So whatever it is that you are going through, draw from that experience, and then to your point, and your point of, we can't just sit here and be like, my idea is awesome, and I'm just gonna run with it and make a business out of it, and money is just gonna rain from the bank. No, you gotta go out and do a ridiculous amount of customer discovery. And that is you sitting down with people who are experiencing that problem, whether it's your friends that are in the same community that you are, that are experiencing similar problems, but who is your target demographic? Who is it that is experiencing that problem? Going to talk to them, and that requires a lot of network before you spend a single dollar. Because that's where we get in trouble, right? We just, here's my life savings, I really want to do this, I'm in love with this solution, this idea that I want, and then ultimately there wasn't any demand, and here we are, and we lost everything, right? So making that part of the priority before you go and write a business plan, before you figure out how you're going to market it, is the thing that you're trying to build even meaningful, and will people pay for it? Because it could be really awesome, right? There's a concept called the adjacent possible. And it is a concept that essentially says, what will technology allow us to do at this particular point in time? But at the same time, what will people adopt, right? So we may talk about self-driving cars, right? But many of us are not riding that thing. So like, you have to figure out what is possible within the problem, right? What is the adjacent possible within the problem that you're trying to solve in the market in which you're in?
So,
Real quick,
Okay,
to
go ahead,
Natalia's
yeah.
point, this is a warning. Don't go out and spend money based on what the thumbs up on your social media. Like, I'm serious. Like, I've seen people do it. Like, they'll have this idea and they'll put it out there.
That is not customer discovery.
It's not. It's not. But people put it out on social media and they'll be like, I'm not going to call names, but like, so you got this book that tells you how to do this thing, and then you put it out on social media, and like thousands of people go like, that's a brilliant idea. I would love that. I would love that book. And then you go out and you print these books, and you don't sell one. Because a thumbs up, a like, I think that's a great idea, is not customer discovery, right? If you don't get people to commit to that thing, you can say, if I got this book, if you're interested in ordering, let me know you can order this book, but don't go spend money based on people's likes. Because people are really kind in the things they say about your product or whatever, doesn't mean they're going to buy it, to Natalia's point.
So far we've talked about passion, right? And so identifying a problem and passion. We've talked about sort of having a roadmap, whether, in part it's market research, in part it's kind of knowing, how you're going to fix that problem and have a broad idea. Earlier, I can't remember whether it was Natalia, Alisia, one of you referenced friends and mentors. Let's talk a little bit about, and Renee mentioned community. Let's talk about the role, and whether it's from your perspective professionally or personally, the role of friend/mentor/community in your entrepreneurial ventures.
I wanted to go back to something I think Renee said about champions and customers. Is that right? I think, and there's some really interesting perspectives coming as well. Phenomenal perspectives. I think that one thing that spurred me forward were those folks who were both champions and customers. Champions by being customers. People who said, you should start this. If you start it, I'll support it. And by support it, I mean like somehow, not just like, we'll meet for coffee once a month. But those champions and customers, because when people put their money where their mouth is, it goes beyond, right, just likes, right? Like people aren't gonna put money or contracts to something that they don't, pretty strongly agree with or want to see move forward. And so for me, that's what mentorship looked like for me, because it took me a lot to kind of like, I don't know anything about a business, So it took people being like, Alisia, if you do this, if you build it, I will come, right? And so those types of people, those folks who, there's always a few people at the beginning who, when you're living on a prayer, are like, I know you can do this. In fact, I'll support it financially. And those, for me, have been the foundation of mentorship that has really continued to propel me forward, as the years go on.
I was going to say that when I first started my business, my husband is the polar opposite of who I am in so many layers, which makes for a great partnership in our home, but it's also sometimes really difficult. He's a very, I'm like, he's a square. This is my husband right here. Lovely, lovely square. But he's very, very like, it's got to be within the box and it's got to fit a certain way, because he's an engineer, so his mind works that way. And so very early on, when we would discuss ideas about business, he would say, you just want me to be your clapping monkey. You remember those monkeys that are like this? And I'm like, kind of do. And so it really made me think a lot about what it is that you need. Because you do need, sometimes, you need clapping monkeys to just, when things are rough and you don't know what to do, and you're just like, you do know what to do is here in your belly button, and you're gonna get there with your gut, but you're just defeated. You need those people to rah-rah around you and say, hey, you're gonna make it, rally up, chin up, and let's go, right? You need those people. But then you also need the lovely squares to look at you and say, hey, is it really what you need to be spending your money on? Is this really fiscally responsible? But more importantly, you need yourself to really be confident within your decision making, to really understand the problem in such a deep way that you are not listening too much to this side or too much to this side, but you're listening to yourself and are guiding yourself through a process. Mentors become a part of that team for you. And it comes in different ways. I don't necessarily, and I think we talked a little bit about this, I don't necessarily like the label or the formality of like, hey, now Renee's my mentor, and I gotta have coffee with her twice a month or whatever. That's not for a lot of people. I'm more of the mindset of like, when I need you, will you pick up, right? and if you need me, I'll pick up, and just learning by watching and being able to have deep, thoughtful conversations about why people are making the decisions they're making. I think that's the mentorship that's kind of worked for me, and that I really try to give others in my circle. I'll have a coffee with whoever, and what you don't want to do is become somebody's crutch, and become a point where they have to run every decision by you, or they don't feel comfortable with their own decision making. So I think having those 3 pockets of people is really important. And in order to do that, you have to have community. You have to get out there, do the scary thing of shaking hands and, getting into circles that may be uncomfortable for the first time, but, at the end of the day, it pays off.
Okay. Anyone else want to?
But yeah, you heard the term, I can show you better than I can tell you. I mean, I think people should approach mentorship like that. Like, I have a mentor, his name is Alden Helton. Alden and I seldom meet, but I watch him, and I see how he moves. And if I need, like you say, he'll pick up if I text him or call him, and I got something really difficult, because again, I think mentors can be crippling, because you feel like you got to go to this person and get every step of the way. You got to get information from that person. But if you watch that person and you see how that person moves throughout community, how they run their business, those kinds of things, that's the best lesson you'll ever learn, right? And if there's something they're doing that doesn't make sense to you, they're there to pick up the phone and go, like, here's why I did that.
I would agree with everyone, but I also would say that it depends what type of client you have also. Working with the international community, there is a lot of trust pieces there. So group support is very critical to that segment. So you would approach that support piece, whether or not you call it mentor or not, in a different way. And also what I would say about mentorship is that it is about opening up doors, it's about networking, but it's also about a two-way partnership. So when I tell folks about looking for someone who's going to support you, it's not just about that person bringing something to you. You have something to give also. So it's a two-way partnership is the way I look at that relationship.
So, go ahead.
Can I
Sorry.
chime in just from the immigrant experience lens? So I came here in 2001 with my entire family from Colombia. $400 in a suitcase for 5 people, so that was fun. And so to your point, and then we came here, we landed straight in Kentucky. So you're like, Colombia, Kentucky, right? So I remember getting off the plane and there were no lights in the streets. I was like, where am I? What is this? So it was a very big culture shock. So to your point, without having the appropriate peer support network, it can be really challenging. And if you layer in on top of that, starting a business in a new country where you may not know the language fully or may not have the business. I mean, I don't have Spanish business Spanish, like I don't have that at all. So when I am speaking business in Espanol, I sound like a 17-year-old trying to speak business. So you can imagine the level of disparity that gives you when you're trying to talk to a banker or an investor, and just the other way around in English. So I fully understand and support that notion of like, hey, when you are starting to get into a new community where you don't really have the network, you do need that peer support. Just be mindful of that becoming your sort of also your setback where you feel like you then have to run it by everybody else. We need to start trusting ourselves a little bit more. I wish I would have done that earlier on.
So I promised you that I would be asking questions that I didn't warn you about, so here we go. When both Natalia, what you said, and Valecia, what you said, got me thinking a little bit about, and I know the work in particular Dave does, and also what TECH-Nique does. It got me thinking a little bit about the impact of intergenerational poverty on entrepreneurship. And I'm curious if any of you have any thoughts about that, about the impact of intergenerational poverty has on the entrepreneurial mind, or the resiliency needed for entrepreneurship, and I use that phrase. I hope my saying the impact on that. I hope that irritated you in some way, but go ahead.
No, no.
No, I genuinely hope it irritated
It did
you.
a little bit, but anyway.
Because I don't believe that. Go ahead.
The first people to invest, was one of the first few people to invest in your business are family members. Those are the people that you first reach out to. And imagine not having that to start with. We talk like limited resources. You don't even have people around you that even have the ability or the knowledge to even cheer you on, right? Because they've never seen it, so they can't really encourage you to something that looks totally foreign to them. They don't have funds to infuse into it. They can't afford to. A lot of times it's almost a mistake to try to get money from folks that don't have much to give, because you are, again, hoping that what you're doing is working, and if it fails, you've not just sunk yourself, you sunk your family. And so it's really difficult. So that intergenerational wealth, I mean, you look at, like, this is a weird sort of explanation of this thing. I watched, anybody know The Untouchables? It was like an old gangster movie. It was like in the 40s or whatever, right? In that movie, there was a scene where they were talking to people, they were talking about J.P. Morgan Chase, right? In the 40s, right? And so think about, when you talk about intergenerational wealth, how they're still around, and they're even obviously bigger than what they were before, and all the family members and all the people that were connected to J.P. Morgan Chase, and how that benefited them. Imagine if and that's what I think we all are like fighting for and trying to work for, I know at least for our organization for sure, is how do we begin that first generation of wealth and then carry that on so that we don't have to keep rinsing and repeating the same thing. So yeah, I won't get into that, but it does upset me, because I think, if we were asking for the same thing in the 40s that we're asking for now.
Well, and I guess part of also what I'm thinking about is this past weekend I went to see an artist, a concert, and in this person's autobiography, they talk about the fact that they ended up in trouble with the IRS when they became famous, because they grew up in a household where there was no money, and they didn't know you had to pay taxes.
Yeah.
They didn't realize how taxes worked.
Yeah.
Right? And that's like a simple kind of example of where that kind of plays out. So my question then becomes as well, like Natalia, you talked about you don't want to become a crutch as a mentor, but it sounds like sometimes members of our community need a little bit more support.
100%.
To
It's
move
like a
forward.
twofold thing, right? So like if you go back to data and not opinions, right? Like the actual data, the hard data out there, specifically for venture backable companies, meaning companies that are going to grow to be $1 billion in valuation, like massive things like Uber and those big things, right? So anything venture backable, the returns for Black, brown founders, female founders from historically marginalized backgrounds are 3 times better. Immigrant founders actually outperform all of other people, because you're literally just doing something incredibly difficult and everything else seems kind of easy, right? So it's like 30 to 40% better return than our peers, right? So the data is there. But if you look at the funding data, right, it goes completely the opposite way. You're talking about 1.5% of the full entire capital stack of venture in the entire world going to Black females. And if you're a Latina, there's like literally 65 Latinas who've ever raised $1 million or more, 65 in the entire history of venture capital. So those are numbers that are staggering, and we can sit here and be like, oh, that sucks, right? And I'm gonna be really upset about it. Or you can say, well, I do know what I can do and what is a parallel system. And this is what we're really good at as historically marginalized founders. And it's not just Black or brown, it's also regionally historically marginalized. We're talking about being in a flyover state, right? We live in Kentucky, Midwest. Lots of founders that have great ideas here are getting passed over because they're not in the coast, right? Regardless of your skin and all the other pieces. People in Appalachia, people in other pieces of the land, right? And so how do we not only change our mindset a little bit from taking this sort of disadvantaged position and making it our advantage, right? By being in community, because now we can create parallel systems to get us there. And in this table, there's 4 parallel systems, right? That have been created within our community to access those resources, right? To get us closer to, my mom cashed her $16,000 401k to create this thing here, right? And so, so how do we not do that so that there's generational wealth within our families? There's literally less than 15 Black billionaires, right, in the entire world. And so how do we create more of those here by thinking bigger, by showing our communities that you can build massive, massive companies with your solving the problem that there's $1 billion company. I'm looking at you, Rodriguez, back in the back. Wow. It's sitting right here. And just from that conversation of like, hey, I'm going to solve aging care, right? How do we put technology on things? How do we expand our thought process? So I think it's twofold, right? There is a disadvantage there, of course. We all know it. We see it. It's $400 on that suitcases. I didn't pay taxes because I didn't know, because my family never told me about it because we didn't have any money. It's, my parents were in jail. It's all of those other pieces. But it's also, we're uniquely positioned to kick butt and take names just from living the way that we live, right? So let's do that.
I wanted to add to that. One thing is some of it can be sort of framing too. I'm not saying we're approaching it with a deficit mindset, but we definitely want to make sure that we remember that, and I'm just going to speak for my own people at this point, we are incredibly resilient, incredibly innovative. If you look at our history of how we've maneuvered through this country and made our place in it, how we, as Black women, started, hair care businesses, that we are, I think, 4 times as likely as other demographics to start a business. And when you look at the actual impetus for starting, the reason why Black hair care, especially for women, became so much of a thing is because it's a fascinating history. I don't want to get geek out, but it's in direct response to us not being seen as women. And so it was like, hey, your hair needs to look like this in order for you to be seen as feminine. And so we were like, all right, cool. We'll just start all these businesses. I'll make this thing called a hot comb, which now we're like, no, anti-hot comb. But the point remains, that in response to the way society has treated us, we have been incredibly innovative. I think about how we used to design braids in our hair to represent pathways to freedom during slavery. I mean, that is, I probably can't cuss in here, but that's freaking amazing. That is so innovative. And so part of it, I think, I wanted to add to this conversation and say it's also about knowing thyself. That adage is so important, knowing thyself, understanding your history, understanding your power, and understanding that that is actually something I am giving to society. Including me is not a philanthropic effort. It's an economic development. You should feel privileged that I am willing to, I may be going too far, but you should feel privileged that I am willing to lend my expertise, considering the history, experiences, and richness of those that I have to bring to the table. If we come at it from that mentality, then it doesn't make sense to not fund RTBI. It doesn't make sense to not fund Wild Accelerator. That's like, oh my gosh, we're missing out on innovation here. This isn't like, no, this is actual innovation that our society is missing out on because we have marginalized certain groups of people. We should be doing everything that we can to bring those groups to the table because it is to all of our gain for that to happen.
And I think to bring some of these folks to the table, I think we also have to understand that to start from level 1 in terms of credit. A lot of folks have issues because they don't know how to do credit. They didn't know how to save money. So all that sets the stage, what I call the pre-entrepreneurship stage. So those are the things that we can do to help aspiring entrepreneurs get themselves positioned so they can get to that table.
I remember one of the things that Dave used to say really early on at RTBI would be like, you gotta get your house in order. You gotta get your house. He'd say that all the time, and I think it makes so much sense, and that's exactly what you were talking about. And it's like, what are the ABCs, right? And because if you have this narrative in the back of your mind, like, oh my gosh, someone's coming for my car, or I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this and that payment, it's really difficult to be over here like, rah, think about $1 billion business. Like, Come on now, right? And so I think it's to your point, it's getting your ABC straight, understanding credit, understanding, lending and how it works and how you can actually finance and what the capital stacks should look like for your specific business and what it is that you're trying to build, more importantly. I think that's really important.
And so to add to that, because I'm gonna give you guys the same thing I gave her, is that a lot of times we get enamored with the product, the thing that we're gonna sell. And the example I use is like, you build this house without a foundation. And then the house is everything that you want, but you want to put another level on the house. And then you go to try to put the second level on the house, only to find that it has no foundation, it begins to sink. And now you're trying to lift the house up to put a foundation under it. And so the money is what really counts. The understanding, like, it's not enough to say, okay, I got this great product. Because I say this all the time, and people can believe it or not believe it, I believe every idea is $1 million idea. The paperclip, right, came from the idea that somebody didn't want to have to pull out the staple, right, to hold the papers together. So somebody took a piece of wire and bent it. The pet rock, people are still buying it, right? And so, but if you don't, it's not enough to know like how you're gonna sell this product, but how do you keep this business open? How do you know the numbers? I can tell you at any given time what our numbers are for our organization, whether we're making money or not making money. And a lot of people are afraid of the money piece of it, the foundational piece, the thing that is everything is going to stand on. I do what we refer to as an aspirational budget, which means that when I first start a thing, I'm looking at what I need. That budget may be like a $500,000 budget because I've got positions in there that I can't afford right now, but I've got a target. You can't hit what you can't see. So you got to start, like people come to me all the time, and because we have this business incubator, I got this great idea, and nobody throw shade at me when I say this. God gave me this idea, and I know it's gonna work, and it's the best thing ever, and you're telling me all this stuff, and I'm ignoring all that because I'm asking you, like, what does it cost? What is gonna make this thing stay alive? Because everybody thinks their idea is a great idea, everybody thinks their product is a great product, and they're likely true, right? But how does that product that you have make money? How does it continue to make money? How do you set yourself up like financially, like you got your credit together and you know how much it costs? 9 times out of 10, and this sounds like a big number, but it's the truth, and I think Renee can speak to this. Whenever a business owner comes to us or somebody wants to start a business, comes and talks to us, and I say, what is your budget? What is it going to take for you to run that business for a year? The number's always too low. Like always too low. Because they left themselves out of that number. Or they left the thing, like I asked the guy that was selling clothes, I said, you deliver the clothes to people, right? You got this product, you take it to them. Do you count your gas? Do you count your time? Do you count the bag that you put it in? You have to take the time to figure out what the thing costs so that you know when you're making money and when you're not. Also, don't make the price such that you have to get a deal to make money. So like if I'm selling cookies and I say to myself, well, I'm gonna try to price these cookies if I can get a sale on sugar and I can get a sale on flour. No, the most that sugar will ever cost you is what the number you should be using. The most that flour will ever cost you is the number you should be using. And I know I'm going too far into this but my point is that understand that if you get it lower, that's great. You just make more of a profit. But if you're trying to make a price, so you don't price things, and people get upset when I say this, you don't price things so that everybody can buy it. Because everybody's not your customer. You price it so that you make money, right? So that you can then do the next thing. Because there's a calculation like, okay, what I paid, what I sold it for equals my profit. But there's no number in there for growth. Because I want to hire another person. So what I paid, what I sold it for, plus what I need to put back to open up a storefront or to hire another person, that number needs to be in that calculation. And so I'll stop.
But I think that was that actually was a nice continuity through this conversation so far, because what we were talking about was the building blocks, right, of a business, and the fact that intergenerational poverty in particular can be a barrier to knowing what those building blocks are and knowing what those steps are. And I appreciate that. That's what I wanted to get to. So I wanted to pull us back, though, because we're coming close towards sort of the end of my time. And I want to take a larger view of the ecosystem in our area, in the Louisville ecosystem, of what are the strengths and weaknesses funding-wise. And we were actually just in a conversation about this with the St. Louis Fed. But what is the strength and weakness of our community, the Louisville community, in that ecosystem in terms of funding for entrepreneurs, for startups, for new ideas?
Here's where it's gonna get spicy.
Everybody waiting for somebody else to answer
We're all like,
this question.
let's set the tone there. All right, I'll go. I'll be that guy. So I think let's start. We'll start with the good stuff. So good stuff is lots of connectivity in the ecosystem. We're small enough where you can get close to someone that knows someone, and like literally, like we're all like 2 degrees of separation from like Kevin Bacon, I guess. But like, you know, so it's very close together. If I know someone, I can do a quick intro and everybody's willing to do that. So that's great. It's also bad because you get a lot of coffees, like Alisia was saying, that don't lead anywhere. So if you are going to start doing that piece, just be really very, and this is an actionable thing for you to do, is do your research ahead of time of meeting the person, understand via LinkedIn, or you know, if you know the person through someone else, ask, hey, what is this person an expert in? So that I can better utilize the time I have with this person, make your coffees 30 minutes. There's no reason to hang out for an hour and a half or whatever when I first meet you. 30 minutes, if you come at me with the specific question and it aligns to what I'm doing, then I can better help you. I can better open doors. I know you're motivated. I know you've done the homework. So that is one thing in this ecosystem that you can always get is the next step. What you cannot always get is like, yes, I'm willing to sign that contract really quickly, or I'm willing to be the first in. There's a lot of external validation needed in our ecosystem, meaning someone from Columbus, Ohio, won't name any names, JP Morgan Chase, has to give you $500,000 and say your program is good for others in the community to say, hey, your program is good, right? And then you're like, no, we've been here for 7 years. So it is that level of difficulty, and it's the same thing with startups in the ecosystem. So from the investment perspective, what needs to happen is we have to go find network with venture capital investors outside of Louisville, say, hey, look at this shiny startup right here. They've already been invested by people in Chicago, and then people are willing to invest. But we just don't take care of our own the way we should, I think. And I know I'm being kind of mean about it. No. It's true. So I think we have some opportunities in getting there, right? Particularly larger organizations, corporate giving, and philanthropy efforts. And I think that we, in a way, need to kind of, I think we as organizations are helping our boots on the ground. We're all friends. We all like know each other. We know what each other are doing. We're not like out here competing and being like, oh, David's doing whatever. And like we're doing each other boards. We're out here like, hey, have you met this person? Go out there and do this. But I think that there's still a sort of silo feeling from the customer perspective. There's still not like a common thread bringing everything together that if I am the entrepreneur, I can easily sort of navigate and understand. So from that customer experience, I may be a customer of Story, right, or the Wild Accelerator and not know anything about TECH-Nique, or not know anything about AMPed, or not know anything about JFCS. So we still have that opportunity there to expand that, but I think it takes, we've been waiting on, maybe like city leadership or maybe like state leadership, but that hasn't happened. So I think citizenship is starting to say, okay, we're just gonna go and we're gonna do it. And, that's my thought process. But thank you. But thanks for funding us if you want to.
I have an unpopular opinion on this.
I doubt it.
I think part of it, and this is something I'm still learning, and that is how to finesse the system. Like, how to understand how systems work, how money flows in Louisville and beyond, and then understanding how you can finesse it to where like you can fit your business into a place where it's needed. And I'm in no way an expert on this. I'm just saying a part of this is the research and learning about the ecosystem. Like you have to understand, okay, like these are the players. This is what they want. This is where my organization or my idea can fit in, and then it's just kind of a wild ride from there. But I think, a lot of it I feel like is time. oftentimes people don't have the time to sort of learn this as they go along. I'm not a huge fan of like, quit it all and go for it and start your business. It's not my style. I think you have to wait. For me, I had to wait until it was the right time to jump. Like, okay, I think I have everything that I need in order to bring enough forward momentum that I can support myself at the level that I want to support myself and move this business forward. But I think oftentimes we're not necessarily privy to the information that we need in order to understand the system that we're living in. And oftentimes it just comes from experience, coming from trying different things, coming from, to Dave's point, watching how other people move from a mentorship perspective and understanding, okay, now's my time. Let me jump. It's time. Do it, you know, and that, I think, just for me personally, has really been enriching as a business owner on how to move forward, understanding how everything works around me.
Can I do a caveat to that point, or just a little pushback on the number of startup founders, and I will be super honest, it's typically Black women that I see get penalized for, I mean, and I'll say this for my people too, we do side hustles. Like, I have 3 jobs. I've had 3 jobs since the moment I landed here, and I think it's kind of made me who I am. Now I'm trying to scale back a little because I'm dying, but it's what we do. Like, we are very effective. That's part of our resiliency. Whereas the funders, and I'm talking specifically investors, are typically, white males, typically in their 40s and 50s and 60s, who have not experienced growing up this way or having families that have grown up this way. So what will inevitably happen when I'm having these conversations with other investors is, well, they are not focused enough. They have 3 other different things, right, going, because you're a real estate agent and you have this and you have that, because you're juggling all the things, right? So inevitably, having this waiting for the right time requires you to have additional income, which require you to have multiple jobs or whatever. When it comes to venture and when it comes to scalable businesses, can and oftentimes becomes a notch on your belt. So I am like, jump as fast as you can. I'm the opposite of you. I'm like, just go, with calculations. But so.
And I'll be the rainbow and unicorn guy. and the reason I say that is, and I think, Natalia, you said this earlier about knowing who you are and what your worth is. I tell people, every room I walk into, I don't walk into that room trying to figure out what I can get. I walk into that room trying to figure out what I can get and whether this is going to work. I'm an energy person. So if I walk into a room, and I've turned down quite a bit of money because I walked into the room and it didn't feel right? And I think when we talk about like the relationships that we have and the things that we've been able to do, going from, and I'll just take the brag here, from the $24,000 nonprofit to a $4.3 million nonprofit in 10 years, is really about relationships. It's about being genuine and not, people smell desperation. Like, you walk in and they know that you really need them, and you get whatever you get, and then you regret what you got, right? And so I think if the business is going to last, is going to be successful, you have to believe that when you walked in, to somebody's point earlier, was like, you've got the best thing. I'm bringing you this, and it's a privilege that you get to be a part of this, right? Just believing in what you do and knowing that you need to do the work to make sure that's the case. Because a lot of times when people want to give you that money, they also want to change what it is you're doing and how you're doing it. And if you spent the time and this thing came from your heart and this is something you believe in, listen to people and like be willing to say, okay, well, maybe I should tweak that or whatever, but the core of what it is you do, because if I had $1 for every time somebody gave me instructions or advice about what I should do and how I should do it, I would not be sitting here today, right? Because you have to believe that what you have is valuable, and that if it's not this opportunity, there'll be another opportunity. So I think, the rainbows and unicorns for me is that create genuine relationships. People don't give us money. We didn't get to $4.3 million because, there was some sort of transactional thing that happened. It was that they believe in me, they believe in the organization. And I remember Sadiqa Reynolds told me this, it was actually Yvette Gentry told me this some years ago. People don't give money to organizations, they give money to people, right? So that's how you have to walk in, believing that what you have is worth investing in and not jumping at that first dollar that presents itself to you, because people will, without fail, disappoint you or put you in a position that you don't want to be in. And then you are doing 96 hours, trying to follow something and trying to match up with, then you change your mission to match the money, and you're doing all those things. So I'm going to just say, for me, I think our success, for whatever that's worth, is that we're about relationships and like making sure that, because also those relationships carry relationships. If people have a relationship with you, you'll be in a room. I was at I think Mike sent this to me, Mike Fine, sent me I was at a board meeting for the Federal Reserve, and Mike sent me a screenshot of me on a screen at another event, right? So I'm here at this one thing, and they're talking about me at another location. And that's what relationships, that's what organic relationships give you. People that are talking about you in rooms that you're not in. Transactional relationships don't do that. And so you have to think about who's your friend and who should you be working with, and who believes in you, because they'll take your story everywhere they go.
And I guess I'll approach it from the area of JFCS being a service provider in the ecosystem here. And what I see is clients are confused about who provides what. So I call that resource hopping. So what happens is that, we have clients I've seen that have 4 or 5 different partnerships or relationships going on with 4 different organizations, trying to achieve the same goal, but end result get no place. So as an ecosystem, we've got to figure out a better way how to better connect together and get that client through the process. Because what's happening is that the end result is that we are just reservicing the same client. They're getting frustrated. They're not achieving their goal, and we're not really making the impact we want to make.
Thank you. I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions from the audience. I've not received any in the QR code, right? Please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alisia Mejores. I am Afro-Puerto Rican and Black American, so I'm Black on both sides. There's Black people who are Latina, and so I'm listening to Spanish and in English at the same time, so, and writing, But one of my questions is, when you were talking about the resilience of our people on both sides, what I found when I went to Howard University, they have these flags, and most HBCUs have those flags of who are the great Howard people, Felicia Rashad, all these different people. And what I found in there, I felt so much pressure because I could not let down my ancestors who've been through enslavement, who immigrated here, and I had like 10 times more than somebody who did not have that story. And so my question is, how do you balance understanding the power and then not, maybe it's like survival's guilt, because my ancestors did all these things to be able to get me here, and then sometimes that can be crippling. So that's my question, if that makes sense.
I mean, I feel like my ancestors want me to go be great, like be greater than they were able to do at that time, lean into my heritage, lean into my identity, lean into my community. And I think maybe I'm not the right person to answer the question. That for me is a source of strength, because I'm kind of already like, what is the quote? I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams. Like, I'm already that. So, like, how can I push that forward for what's coming in front of me? Now, that feels like a little bit of pressure to me. Like, I got to be great and then set up a stage where my future ancestors have a foundation to stand on and push it even further. But maybe just leaning in and understanding that our ancestors want us to be great. They're excited that we're here where we are, and they want to see how we can push it forward.
I will think about it from a parental perspective. I'm a parent, and I'm thinking about what would I want my great-grandchildren or whatever. And I think that I would want them simply to be happy and joyful, right? And so I'm gonna bring it all the way back to what is your definition of success, right? If your definition of success isn't what is in a banner at Howard University, then I certainly, as your great-grandfather, do not want you to go pursue that, right? If this is not going to perfectly line up with your ikigai, with your sense of happiness, then I do not want that dissonance within you just so you can be in a banner at Howard University. What I want you to do is put in paper, this is what wakes me up and fulfills me and makes me happy, and then go fearlessly, is that the word? Fearlessly pursue that, right? With every cell in your body. That's what I would want. And I'm in the same boat of like my grandmother, my great-grandmother at 13 made her way from like rural Colombia with cooking meals for the people that were making the highways to get to the capital. My grandmother was in Panama doing stuff with the troops, American troops, to be able to send money back. And then my mom comes here. So I feel your pain of like, oh my gosh, there's all this history and all this pressure, but you don't have to be anything other than what you want to be, right? And your business can reflect that.
Yes.
Be the best version of yourself.
They fought for that. That's what they so that you could have the freedom to be who you are without restraint.
Other questions?
Quick question in reference to when we talk about Louisville and resources. Why hasn't Louisville made more efforts to do more Shark Tank type initiative with like greater funding for new business owners that they have a great, like a $4 billion company sitting right in here, but there's no access to that funding or the resources or support to help them launch that. So I just was wondering if Louisville has thought of like implementing something like that where it'd be more supporters to fund you as a business owner, but then having initiatives like that in place so they have access to that.
I'm gonna take that one too.
Yeah.
That's okay with you. Yeah. So that specific capital is venture, right? It's a different asset class than perhaps banking or a simple angel investment. You're talking about to build $1 billion business, it takes millions and millions and millions. So it goes beyond the city and it goes into a state level, right? Our state over the last 2 years fought really hard to get a Monique Quarterman, who used to be in the heading economic development over there, fought really hard to get us $117 million in this funding that's specifically going to venture capital. Of that allocation that was supposed to be deployed, only a percentage of that goes to marginalized founders, right? I think the total is about $11 million. And $11 million is not a lot of money. So you talk about $11 million over a 5-year span, right? That's supposed to get a match, whether it gets a match or not, who knows, right? So you're already talking about a state that is very underfunded. We have a total of 4 venture capital firms. Only one of them is women-led, none of them are brown-led. So you have all these compounding issues there. You then also have the issue of to start a venture capital firm and become a general partner in a firm, it requires you to be certified, which costs a lot of money. The process of even starting one is about $160,000 just in tax fees alone. And then as a general partner, you have to contribute 1 to 2% of the total fund. So if you wanted to start a fund, a $20 million fund, which is a normal size fund, I have to come up with 2% of that, right? So we're talking about generational wealth and where am I going to get? I came in with $400, guys, so I don't have that 2%, right? So there's all these layers of prohibitive participation, I would call it. And so when you think about it that way, the city, it's a small part of the whole process. And when we talk about parallel systems, it needs to be the citizenship that steps out and says, hey, I was very successful at a venture here and I love my city, and now it's time to go put money in there. And then maybe organizations like this, right, rallying around their funders and saying, hey, this is the right thing to do, and we're going to make a thesis that's specific to funding founders that perform better and that live in the city, right? So that then maybe they come back and do more. But it's a multi-layer, very sort of long process. We don't have to necessarily have like a massive pot of money to start, but we do need to initiate, because we have to show some proof ourselves, right? Of like maybe 3 or 4 more smaller $5 million funds that are led by Black and brown or female general partners to kind of just get the ball rolling.
I just want to add to that. This is what I mean by finessing systems. And I want to make sure that you don't think that I get real insecure. So like, I am not in any way a person who doesn't have authentic relationships, and I know that's not what you were saying. But I want to be clear. When I bring my authentic self to the table, you're not about it, as pointed out here, right? Like, you're not funding us. So then, because I can't actually bring my fully authentic self, and you don't see the value in what I'm doing enough to say like, oh, we should fund that at a really high level, then I have to play the game and I have to finesse the system. So I have to understand what is the ecosystem that I'm dealing with, and how do I need to use it to, to get what not just what I want, but to get what I know needs to be gotten by my organization. I can't fight this battle. That's somebody else's battle. I'm trying to increase diversity in technology. Like, that's a hell of a lift right there. So I need to understand, like, okay, I got to stay in my lane and try and do what it is that I know needs to be done. And then I have to understand the system around me so that I can, as my ancestors have done, finesse that system in order to get what's right done, and it's sad that it has to be that way, but I see that as a vital part of being an entrepreneur. Like, I wish I could bring my full authentic self to every table, right? But that's not the way it works right now. And so I have to think about it in a more strategic way.
I think about it similarly, but a little bit different than you do, Alisia, in the sense that I do bring myself everywhere, in the sense that if this room isn't for me, then I leave the room, because I as a person I just can't code switch anymore. I've just gotten over it over the years, to be honest with you. So I'm like, I'm loud and obnoxious, hey. And it's gotten me a lot of fun things, so I'm okay with it. But what I have learned is I've gotten a really great internal thermometer for the water in the room. I walk into a room and I no longer get into cold water. If I feel that the water is cold in this room, I am going to say thank you so much for the opportunity of being here without being, mean about it. And then I'm going to go where the water is warm and the stream is beautiful and there's salmon, right, in the river. So, and that may not be in Louisville, sadly, right? And so that's what I was saying about, sort of needing that external validation. So we live in a world that's virtual. If you can't find funding here, let's go somewhere else, right? And to Dave's point earlier of having opportunities to be funded by certain entities that then want to come and sort of put their label on things and force you to do things a certain way, well, that doesn't necessarily end up with a product that fits what we're trying to achieve. So you just sort of move on and go around and find the warm water, right? And then somehow it works. I don't know exactly how.
But sometimes there is no warm water.
There's always warm water.
No, there's not always. Not always. Listen, I feel you. I feel what you're saying. I feel what you're saying.
I mean, there's not always warm water in Louisville. I will say that.
Right.
Well, what I'm saying, though, is not that I'm not talking about rooms. I'm talking about systems. I'm not talking about how I feel in a room. I'm talking about like how I maneuver through a system that is not designed for me.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. I just want to be clear, because I'm not saying that like I'm out here a puppet. I'm just saying that like for me, as a Black woman, it is an incredible experience maneuvering through, and oftentimes my counterparts, like Black men, and also my counterparts of non-Black women, are having different experiences than I am coming into rooms. I mean, you saw me in my bio, doctor, everything. And even here, I'm like, what happened here? Because that is, I'm just joking, kind of. But because that is like, I literally, I'm just being transparent, like got that PhD for validation purposes. Very passionate about what I studied. But it also gets me into rooms that previously, even though I was saying the same shit just 10 years ago, gets me into rooms that I didn't previously wasn't privy to, unfortunately. And so that's what I'm saying when I'm talking about like thinking about how to like finesse the system. Okay, you need me to have a PhD in order to be taken seriously. And maybe that's not true for you all, and I respect that. But for me, like, I have to like think innovatively about the system in order to survive.
I do agree with that. I think that's the same reason when I got hired at U of L, I will only do it if you pay for me to go to Stanford to get my general partner. And they did. That was like, this is the salary, and then you gotta pay. And so now I got my little badge, right? And now that opens rooms. And I did that so I could then become a general partner in a fund, right? And people would take me seriously because I went to Stanford University. You went to Harvard University to do a thing so that people could. So I mean, it's like you have to hack your way through.
Actually, I didn't.
I
went,
you
but not
pretend when.
No, I have not. I went to Harvard, but not for that purpose. And this is not anything against what you guys are saying, but I stand on that. I stand on this is who I am, and this is what I got. And I went because that was in nonprofit leadership stuff that I needed to do what I'm doing better.
Yeah.
I didn't have a college degree. My degree is in justice criminal. If they read bios, mine was like easily the least impressive, right? For real. Like, and I'm not.
And not the prettiest.
And I'm not, huh?
And you're not the prettiest in this.
Absolutely not. Oh, no, for sure, guaranteed. But I mean, I had a college degree. I got a college degree when I was 40, right? I mean, so I'm not. None of what I do, to your point about your ancestors, like the work has already been done. I just have to walk in it. I just have to have the faith to believe that what I have to bring is enough, right? And until we stop we talk about parallel systems, right? Until we stop going into rooms and accommodating those rooms that are not for us, those rooms continue to exist and continue to get stronger, right? And we have to at some point say that's not gonna work. I mean, I guess people like me, but there are people that I'm not fool enough to believe that everybody likes me, right? But you can't deny the work that I do. You can't ignore that I'm getting results, right? And when you talk about like funding, we get a lot of national funding, a lot of funding outside of the U.S. because people do see that there's a result in there. Like my chief of staff, Christina Shane, was like, I don't get it sometimes. We joke about having leprechauns because when it looks like we should have never got something, we end up getting it. But because people see the work and they see the sincerity in like what I bring and that I'm not compromising what I believe and what my intentions are, and people connect to that, and enough people connect to that for me to be able to meet the mission. And I'm not fool enough to pretend like what you're talking about doesn't exist. I absolutely know it exists. I can't do it, and I refuse to do it. And I think the more that we refuse to do it, that's when things change. Because when we talk about economic power, I was talking to my team about this today, was that for the business incubator, for the tech program, for the music program, it's about getting economic power not just for Dave, but just for the people in front of us, but like for enough of us to make the people not ignore it. I tell people this and feel how you want to about it, but like people don't necessarily take meetings with me because they like me. They sometimes take meetings with me because they can't afford not to, right? Because I'm in a position to where it would be a mistake not to take a meeting with me because I have achieved a level of economic power, a level that, and I don't say this arrogantly in any way, but I've worked to a point where you have to listen to me, right? Because that's a problem if you don't. It benefits you and it benefits me, and that's all I'm in there for. And so I 100% see it, and I tell the toughest thing, and you can argue with me this all day about this, the toughest thing in life is being a black or Hispanic woman, period. Like, because you hitting it from all sides. Like you getting slammed. So I take credit, like the fact that I'm just a man, even though I'm a black man, is better, puts me in a better position. No. Puts me in a better position than you are. And so I acknowledge that, but again, I just refuse, and anybody that knows me, I refuse to be anything other than me. Like I can't do it. I have to sleep at night.
So I want to pause this for a moment. I know you have a follow-up question, and I want to say one other thing before I'm going to say a couple of things quickly before I turn it over to Renee. One is that, so Dave and I were at a meeting 3 weeks ago with the Louisville branch of the St. Louis Federal Reserve, which is actually conducting a focus group and a study on granting opportunities for economic and workforce development in our community. Because this very thing is what's not happening enough in our community. And one of the things that I kind of took away from that conversation, among other things, is we can't wait for anybody else, right? And that's part of what we were already talking about, is that the more that we don't have parallel processes, but we have integrated processes, the better that we're going to be able to do that. And we have organizations here, such as Metro United Way with Black Love, that is doing some of that, right? And I think that it's an important example to point out and shout out for. And so I think that that's an important additive to that.
Let me say this real quick. So Al Cowling, Al Cowling used to be with the Kellogg Foundation, said this to me about 5, maybe 6 years ago. He said, we can spend our energy trying to tear down the dominant narrative, or we can build a new narrative, right? Because you can beat yourself to death trying to change what is and how it's as big and as strong as it is. Or when you talk about those parallel systems, that's what we need to be focused on. You can chip away at that dominant narrative, but I think when you create those parallel systems, they in themselves chip away at that dominant narrative. But if we keep believing that this is the only way to get there, we've proven that over 400 years shows that we gonna be here. We ain't going nowhere, right? And we're gonna get it done. And I think that's true for anybody that really believes in what they're doing and the business or whatever they have, is that you just gotta keep believing in you and don't let those things that say you can't, stop you from doing it. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I just want to say one really quick thing, and that is that this conversation that we're having right now is so important. And this is oftentimes when you have, panels, and, I know everybody on this panel has been on a panel where it's like, oh, we need that diverse voice. Let's have that one person, you know what I'm saying? But like what we're seeing here is a representation of a multitude of diverse experiences that we are all having, even being from either the same racial or gender group, and that wrestling with how to work and succeed within the system, how to stay true to ourselves, how to live in our own authenticity, how to continue to be our ancestors' wildest dreams, is something that really needs to be wrestled with more. And so I just really appreciate the difference of opinions and and to JFCS for seeing well, there's probably value. What if we didn't just have one, What if we had a multitude of people? And I hope everybody is seeing everybody's different approaches. Some of them are parallel. Y'all keep talking about parallel systems. I don't really know what you're talking about, but I'll look into it later. But
We'll do that in part B.
Somebody to be successful outside of the dominant system.
Oh, I've just never heard that terminology. I'll go do some research on it. But it's really important. It feels really comfortable in here, and I just wanted to comment that that's good.
Well, I appreciate that. As the CEO of JFCS, I will tell you that I appreciate that, and as somebody whose great-grandfather snuck on a ship to get here and then died, and whose grandfather at the age of 13 had to work to build a business and then lost it all, I absolutely feel, there's a whole conversation we can't get into today about whether Jews are white or not, right? I mean, that's a whole nother topic of conversation, but I appreciate that because this was intentional and it's intentional in here on a daily basis. So thank you for that. Some business things, because for those of you who don't know, there's a TV show that some people want to watch tonight. I don't know what that is. Right. Speaking of that, I'm going to ask Renee to join me up here. You're going to do some closing comments. As she comes up, I'm going to tell you all that This event has been filmed. I should have warned you that from the beginning, but the filming was actually there, so none of you were filmed. The idea here is that we post this on our YouTube channel so that if you know of people who might find this a stimulating conversation, and it's the beginning of a conversation, it is not the end of a conversation by any means, please spread the word. Usually it takes 3 to 4 days to get it, 2 to 3 days, 3 to 4 days if you're on my schedule, to get it posted up to the JFCS YouTube channel, which I guess is that what that is? The QR code? Renee, thank you for coming and thank you for closing us out.
So we do I know, give a round of applause for the panel. That's the first part. This is gonna be very, very quick. Raise your hand if you love the panel. Raise your hand if you feel like you got valuable information today. Raise your hand if you remember every single thing.
Parallel systems.
Good. So the good thing is you don't have to remember everything. You need to scan that code. You need to fill out the survey. Also, you are going to there's an email that's going to come your way with the resources. Each person on here, plus Metro United Way, there's tons of resourcing here. I'll say I work in a bunch of different other states. I know it may feel like it's not warm. You do have a very warm resource system going on here. So if you haven't reached out and figured it out yet, start local. Start reaching out to all of the resources that they're going to email you. Take advantage of those and then share the resources. That's the other part. Share it with somebody else that you know and invite them to know about the resources. And you don't have to memorize everything because you could just scan that and they're going to send you every single thing. That's it. That's what I wanted to say. Share the resources, take advantage of them, and you do have a wonderful ecosystem here, so take advantage of that and then scale out. Those are my points. Anything else?
Thank you.
Oh, and another point I was going to say, nobody ever follows up, so take advantage of that too. Everybody comes here, they just look at it, they do it, and they don't. So be that one person who takes advantage of everything. You're going to
Be the change.
That's it. All right. Have a great time.